There is a kind of success the world reveres, yet it quietly devours the soul. It shines on the surface, praised, admired, even envied. But beneath the applause, something sacred begins to erode. Not your title, not your status, your truth. In chasing this kind of success, people build impressive lives, careers with weight, reputations with polish, resumes that gleam. And still, something slips, something quiet, something vital. The connection to who you really are begins to fracture, not in a loud, obvious way, but slowly, invisibly, until you wake up with everything and feel like a stranger to it all. See, the modern world doesn't demand that you know yourself. It demands that you perform. It offers ready-made dreams and one-size-fits-all ambitions, paths that look right because everyone else is on them. But just because a path is crowded doesn't mean it leads anywhere real. And when you reach that goal, you never question. The feeling isn't pride, it's distance, not just from the world, but from yourself. Carl Jung didn't define success by what you could accumulate. To him, the true achievement was staying whole in a world that asks you to split in half, to preserve the soul, not just progress the image. Because when that integrity fractures, it doesn't matter how many peaks you reach. You're still lost, not out there but within. This isn't about rejecting the world. It's not a call to abandon ambition or retreat into fantasy. It's a call to realignment, to come back to the center of your own being, to remember that any success that asks you to betray yourself is not success. It's a silent failure wrapped in a round of applause. So the question is not just, what have you achieved? But rather, who did you stop being to get here? This isn't a warning. It's an invitation, a moment to pause, not to quit, but to turn inward and ask, is this mine? Is this me? Because sometimes the deepest emptiness isn't loud. It's the quiet ache that no achievement can touch. And if you felt it, if some part of you is whispering that something essential has been left behind, then this message is for you. No formulas, no quick answers, just one honest direction. Return to yourself, without guilt, without hesitation, and without fear of abandoning what was never truly yours. You might believe you're steering the wheel of your life, that your choices are deliberate, conscious, yours. But stop for a moment and trace them back. How many of your recent decisions came from clarity? And how many from fear? How many times have you said yes when every part of you was whispering no? How many times have you smiled at praise for things that left you hollow inside? These aren't small questions, because they point to something deeper. The growing distance between the life you're living and the life that's truly yours. There's a vast difference between living and performing a life, and many people, maybe even you, are stuck in roles they've learned to play so well that they no longer know where the mask ends and the self begins. What Carl Jung called identification with the persona isn't just a philosophical idea. It's what happens in real life, every day. It's how you show up to work polished and agreeable, how you speak just enough truth to seem sincere, how you regulate your tone so that no one ever sees too much. It's how you suppress the wildness of your emotions just to appear composed, even when everything inside you is pleading to overflow. Living like this doesn't just exhaust you, it disconnects you. You begin to form relationships not with others from your truth, but with them from your image. And eventually, it dawns on you. They don't really know who you are, and maybe you don't either. The disconnection doesn't crash down all at once. It settles in quietly. It starts when you bite your tongue instead of speaking up, when you agree out of habit, not conviction, when you start filtering your spontaneity to seem acceptable, mature, professional, and then one morning, you wake up with the haunting sense that you're living a life that looks like yours, but isn't. And here lies the quiet danger. The world will keep rewarding you for this role. It will celebrate your composure, applaud your consistency, promote your performance, and no one will notice the quiet emptiness carving itself into your chest. because that kind of pain is invisible. It's functional. It doesn't disrupt the meeting or ruin the photo. It hides behind success, but you'll feel it in the silent anxiety attacks that show up without warning, in the restless nights where sleep won't come, in the unshakable hollowness that success can't fill. This is the cost of a life performed, and the truth is sharp, but it must be said. If you keep performing, you will forget how to be yourself. And when that forgetting becomes complete, there's nothing left but a body that works and a soul that doesn't speak anymore. So before the disconnect becomes irreversible, take a moment, not a break, a reckoning. Ask yourself, brutally and sincerely, who is this version of me that I'm showing to the world? And more importantly, who had to be buried inside me to make this version possible? Because here is where the trap of success reveals itself. The very thing you were told would fulfill you may be the very thing that's erasing you. And it's time to bring that truth into the light. Let's go deeper into this pattern. Let's unravel the invisible trap that distances you from yourself while convincing you you're winning. If this message is resonating with you, if something inside you is stirring, then stay close. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. This journey isn't about giving up your path. It's about finding the courage to walk it without losing yourself along the way. You've been conditioned from the very beginning to believe that success equals fulfillment, that if you just follow the formula, get the degree, land the stable job, reach financial independence, life will reward you with happiness, peace, meaning. But what they didn't tell you is that you can accomplish all of that and still feel profoundly lost, because the kind of success the world sells rarely nourishes the soul. It often flatters the ego but leaves the deeper self starving. And the problem isn't success itself. It's what happens when success becomes the sole metric of a life's worth, when your days, your energy, your decisions, and your relationships are all rearranged to serve a goal that never asked what you truly need to feel alive. And the closer you get to that goal, what you thought was there, the more you begin to sense that there is no destination at all, just another benchmark, another rung, another layer of performance. Carl Jung once said, "The unlived life is a disease from which one can die." At first glance, that may sound dramatic, but pause. Really feel into it. How many people do you know who did everything right, checked every box, made all the moves, and still live with quiet misery? Their lives look stable from the outside, but inside, it's an emotional erosion, chronic anxiety, numbness, relationship breakdowns, a persistent, formless grief. That is not a coincidence. That is the direct outcome of a life severed from its own essence. Success that's rooted in external validation comes at a cost. It asks you to adapt to environments that don't embrace who you truly are. It requires that you conform, dilute, suppress. Your creativity becomes inconvenient. Your sensitivity, a weakness. Your spontaneity, a liability. And all of it is disguised as growth. But this kind of growth often grows in the wrong direction. Outward, away from the self. You scale the ladder, yes, but only later do you realize that the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall. And now you're trapped. You've invested so much time, effort, identity, that turning around feels like failure. You've created an image that others believe in, an image you now feel obligated to maintain. And every time you think about walking away from it, guilt arises, fear takes over. So you stay, you perform, you preserve the illusion. And this is the real trap, the success that locks you into a life you can't leave without feeling like a failure. But let me tell you something that few will. Failure is not changing course. Failure is continuing to betray yourself just because the numbers look good. Failure is becoming unrecognizable to your own heart just to keep everyone else comfortable. Failure is silencing all the internal warning signs simply because the world keeps clapping. But here's the truth. Quiet, steady, and liberating. There is still time, but only if you're willing to look directly at what you've been avoiding. Because success without self-alignment isn't success. It's a subtle form of self-destruction, one that leaves you celebrated on the outside, but collapsing within. And the sooner you recognize it, the sooner you can pivot, not away from your life, but toward a version of it that finally feels real. So how can you tell if this is already happening to you? What are the everyday symptoms of this inner erosion? What does it actually look like when your soul is being edited out of your life? That's what we'll explore next. We'll bring this disconnection out of the abstract and into the concrete, where you can see it clearly, name it honestly, and begin to reclaim what's been fading in silence. You won't wake up one morning with a blaring realization that you've lost touch with yourself. It doesn't happen like that. The disconnection creeps in slowly, quietly, like fog rolling into a familiar street. No alarms, no announcements, just a gradual fading of clarity. It weaves itself into your habits, your tone, your choices, until one day you realize you've been living, maybe for months, maybe for years, as a carefully edited version of yourself. A version that gets things done, keeps it all together, but no longer feels. So how do you know if this is already happening to you? The clues are subtle, but constant. Start by examining your decisions. Are they grounded in your own truth? Or are they built on the fear of being seen as difficult, ungrateful, too much? How often do you say yes, not because you want to, but because you're afraid of what a no might cost you? And when you say, I want this, do you mean it? Or are you echoing what others expected you to want? Pay attention to your silences, the times you swallowed your truth for the sake of peace, the moments you felt the urge to speak and instead chose the safety of staying agreeable, the conflicts you avoided not because you were wise, but because revealing how you really felt would have broken the illusion you've been upholding. Every time you hold back just to protect the image others have of you, you abandon a small but sacred part of yourself. And then there's your energy, not the physical kind, but the psychic kind, the kind that lives in your chest, in your breath, in your emotional atmosphere. When your day ends, do you feel spent or fulfilled? Do the things that fill your calendar also fill your spirit? Or are you pouring yourself out into tasks and roles that return nothing but exhaustion? Because when you live disconnected, everything starts to feel muted. The vibrancy fades, the spark dims. What once made you feel alive begins to pass you by unnoticed. And the scariest part? You start to call this numbness normal. Watch your emotions. When the self is distant, the unconscious begins to protest. Small frustrations trigger big reactions. Or worse, beautiful moments pass right through you, untouched. You find yourself snapping at trivial things or feeling nothing when you know you should feel everything. That's not dysfunction. That's a backlog of neglected emotion, repressed memories, unspoken needs, unfelt truths, all of it building pressure beneath the surface until it leaks out sideways. And then your identity begins to dissolve, not all at once, but in layers. You become a chameleon, a version of you at work, another with your friends, a different one still with family, but none of them feel entirely true. You're not choosing who to be. You're adapting constantly to maintain connection, to avoid disruption, to survive. And somewhere in that survival, you forget how to access your own center. This is also why being alone becomes so hard. The silence becomes unbearable. Because in that silence, all the questions rise. What actually moves me? What do I even want? What matters to me? Not to them, not to the world, but to me. And the truth is, you might not know anymore, and that's terrifying. But it's also revealing. These symptoms, this disorientation, this background ache are not random. They are signs, signals that your life is drifting off its axis, that something inside you is calling to be remembered. And now that you know how to recognize these signs, the question becomes urgent. What can you do about it? How do you begin to listen again? How do you reawaken a connection to your thoughts, your feelings, your desires, without burning down the life you've already built? That's where we're going next. We'll explore real, tangible practices that gently pull you back to yourself. Practices that don't require you to destroy what you have, but to realign it with who you are. Let's begin that process together. The good news is that losing yourself is not the end of your story. In fact, it may be the beginning of something far more honest. That sense of being adrift isn't a failure. It's a call, a quiet, persistent invitation from the unconscious to come back home. And in this case, home isn't a place. It's you, your center, the version of you that never needed an audience to feel real. But this return to self isn't something that just happens. It's not automatic, and it won't be handed to you in a moment of clarity. It requires intention, presence, and most importantly, action. So for a moment, let's leave theory behind. Let's step away from ideas and step into experience. There are practices, simple, grounded, and accessible, that can serve as bridges to your own inner reunion. And the first of them is disarmingly basic, yet profoundly powerful: the radical listening of silence. And by silence, I don't mean guided meditations or soft music with gentle voices leading the way. I mean real silence, raw, undistracted, no phone, no playlist, no agenda, just you sitting in stillness. It sounds easy, but for those who have been disconnected from themselves, it can feel almost unbearable, because once the outer world quiets down, the voices you've ignored, the doubts, the grief, the truths begin to rise, and that's exactly where the healing starts. The discomfort is not a barrier, it's the doorway. What feels like unraveling is actually reconnection in motion. Another essential practice, one that Carl Jung spoke of often, is the dialogue with the unconscious. You can begin this through deep, uncensored journaling. Take a notebook and write freely. No filters. No need to sound intelligent or coherent. Don't perform. Don't edit. Just pour whatever is inside you onto the page, as if no one will ever see it, because no one will. This process bypasses the persona and opens a direct line to the parts of you that have been silenced. In that space, truths begin to surface. Sometimes they take the form of memories. Sometimes it's raw emotion. Anger, longing, sorrow, clarity. Whatever shows up, welcome it. Without judgment, without resistance. Alongside this, make space in your life for what I call rituals of symbolic reconnection. These don't need to be grand. In fact, the smaller they are, the more powerful they become. Take a walk without music, not to reach a destination, but simply to feel your feet on the ground and listen to your breath. Cook a meal slowly, intentionally, as a quiet act of care for yourself. Say no to something small, not because it matters, but because you want to feel the strength of your own boundary. Each of these gestures whispers something important to your unconscious. You exist again. You're reclaiming yourself. And then comes one of the most important, yet overlooked tools on this path: progressive sincerity. This is not about suddenly declaring your truth to the world or cutting ties recklessly. It's about identifying the spaces in your life where you've been the most silent and choosing gently to express yourself there. Not all at once, just a little more honestly, a little more clearly. Every micro choice to stop pretending becomes a brick in the foundation of your reconnection. And with each one, your inner structure grows stronger. You begin to inhabit yourself again. But understand this: the path to authenticity is not paved with ease. It involves deconstruction. And that can be terrifying, because the more you start living from your center, the more your presence begins to disturb the roles and dynamics others have come to expect from you, especially those who quietly benefited from your performance. And this brings us to one of the hardest and most liberating parts of the journey: the pain of disappointing others, because it will happen. It must. And paradoxically, it's one of the clearest signs that you're finally beginning to live for real. No meaningful transformation happens without discomfort. And perhaps the most painful, most feared, yet most necessary form of discomfort is the experience of disappointing those who once applauded the version of you that was never fully real. When you begin the journey back to yourself, when you stop accommodating, Stop pretending. Start setting boundaries where there used to be quiet compliance. Something shifts. Others feel it, and they don't always respond with grace. The pushback doesn't come in grand confrontations. It shows up in small, subtle cracks. A coworker who grows distant because you're no longer eager to blend in. A family member who subtly withdraws because you didn't follow the path they imagined for you. A friend who flinches at your newfound honesty. And perhaps most haunting of all, those silent looks of disappointment, not at who you are, but at who you stop pretending to be. Here's the truth. When you begin living more truthfully, you start to break invisible contracts, unspoken agreements that were never consciously made, but that have governed your relationships for years. The disappointment others feel isn't directed at your authenticity. It's directed at the version of you they constructed, the agreeable, quiet, pleasing, reliable version. And losing that version can feel like a betrayal to them, but it isn't a betrayal. It's a birth. Because every time you choose honesty over appeasement, every time you disappoint someone by being real, you forge a new agreement with yourself, a pact of loyalty to your soul, a declaration that you will no longer abandon yourself to keep the peace. But this requires immense courage, because the pull to go back, to make it easier, smoother, softer, is strong. You will want to apologize for taking up space, for making others uncomfortable, for stepping outside the role they placed you in. But there's a brutal truth here that cannot be avoided. The price of never disappointing others is always self-abandonment. You silence your needs. You bury your desires. You keep living in dynamics based not on truth, but on conditioning. Jung spoke of this very moment. He called it individuation, the painful separation from inherited identities, from social roles that no longer serve. And yes, it hurts. You will feel strange, misunderstood. You may even be labeled selfish or cold. But remember, there is no way to truly find yourself without losing what was never really you. And then, something unexpected begins to happen. The relationships that survive your return to authenticity start to feel different, richer, fuller, real, because they are no longer built on performance, but on presence. And new connections begin to form. This time, with people who resonate with your essence, not your act. This is the beginning of a different kind of success, one that can't be measured by status or applause or approval. It is quieter, but deeper. It is the kind of success that allows you to look in the mirror, not just the one in your bathroom, but the one of your own consciousness, and feel peace. That mirror is where the real work begins, in the stillness of night, when no one is watching, when the noise fades, and you are left with only yourself. What do you see? What do you feel? Jung reminded us that the soul doesn't care about your resume. It doesn't chase your goals. It isn't moved by applause. The soul craves one thing only: truth, wholeness, integrity. And if you spend your life chasing external markers of worth, you will eventually pay for it with the one thing that can never be replaced: your authenticity. True success is not a finish line. It is not a moment of external recognition. It is an internal alignment, a quiet, steady commitment to live from your center, even when it's inconvenient, even when it costs you, even when others don't understand. It's the courage to be disliked, the bravery to walk alone, the strength to start over, just so you can stop lying to yourself. And here's the secret most won't say aloud. Living in alignment with your truth will hurt at first, but it will free you in the end. Yes, you might lose people. You might lose comfort. You might even lose a version of stability. But what you gain is something no applause can offer: inner coherence. And that coherence, being able to stand in your own presence and feel at home, is the foundation of any real joy, any real peace. If you've stayed with me this far, it's because something in you has already awakened. Something in you is no longer willing to live halfway. That's the part of you you must now follow, the part that remembers, the part that wants to come home. So let me ask you, when in your life did you begin to lose yourself? Or better yet, what are you now ready to reclaim? Write it in the comments. not for me, for you, as a declaration, a step, a signal to the part of you that's been waiting for permission to return. And if this spoke to you, don't stop here. The next video continues this journey, one conscious step at a time, because the road to self-knowledge is long, but every step you take is a quiet revolution against everything that tried to make you forget who you are. I'll meet you there.